Welcome to Stetson Law Live. Your host today, Professor Bobbi Flowers. And her guests from the Moot Court team, Jeremy Bailey. From the trial team, Felicia Pearson. And from the Alternative Dispute Resolution Board, Haley Brew. Our topic today, advocacy at Stetson Law. Using Ustream's chat feature, you can have your questions answered in real time.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Advocacy at Stetson Law. We're very excited to be here to tell you a little bit about what goes on here at Stetson in the area of advocacy. And I'm very excited to have with me three of our very successful board members. Please feel free throughout the presentation to send us questions. We will try to answer them as soon as we get a chance, and hopefully we'll answer all your questions through our conversation. Again, my name is Bobbi Flowers, and I'm a professor here at Stetson College of Law. Have been here much longer than I'm going to reveal to any of you. I started out in the advocacy area. I was the center director for advocacy, and now I am the co-director of the Center for Elder Law. So I'm very excited to be here to talk a little bit about what we have. And I'd like to have first our panel introduce themselves. Haley?
Hi, my name is Haley Brew. I'm on the ADR board at Stetson.
My name is Jeremy Bailey. I'm the Chief Justice of the Moot Court board here at Stetson.
All right.
My name is Felicia Pearson, and I'm a member of Trial Team.
All right. So we have kind of a variety of team members here, and so we're going to talk a little bit about what they do. But I guess the first thing we need to really do is kind of all understand what this thing of advocacy means. What does it mean to be an advocate? And primarily, what is the advocacy program here at Stetson? Advocacy really means the learning of the skills that are necessary to really represent people in hearings, in trials, in all the different ways that they need to be represented or need to be defended in the different avenues that they may be faced with. I always think of advocacy as being that opportunity to kind of walk alongside someone to help them do something they can't get accomplished all for themselves. So for example, they need to negotiate a settlement and they don't know how to do that. And so as a lawyer, as their advocate, I walk alongside them to help them with negotiations. Have I covered it, Jeremy, or is there something more to advocacy you think would be helpful?
When I think about it in terms of the classes at the law school, I think of it in terms of the advocacy being the practical side of the law, and that your first year you take a lot of the black letter law, learning about contracts and constitutional law and those things. And the advocacy classes are more learning hands-on what you're going to actually do in the practice of law. And so when I my second year started taking a lot of these advocacy classes, I was able to take those directly to my job and apply those in interviewing clients or in drafting, appellate briefs or motions for trials. So it was kind of I felt like the practical side helped me have the skills I needed to work in the legal field.
Right. That seems kind of scary. Felicia, how about the first time you were in an advocacy class? Was that kind of scary?
Yes. It was
Tell us a little
bit nerve-wracking, because advocacy classes, as Jeremy was saying, is not passive. It's not a sit there and answer a question sort of thing. It's really a hands-on, get up in a courtroom, speak in front of people, and it can be nerve-wracking. But because it is so nerve-wracking, it's also so rewarding. Because by the end of that class, you know for sure that you're capable of getting into a courtroom and doing what you're hired to do when you eventually get a job.
Right. And your first class would have been trial ad?
Yes, trial ad was my first actually speak in a courtroom class.
Kind of class. All
Yes.
right. Well, for a second, let's just talk, step back, because you guys are all on competition teams. And obviously, not every student that comes to Stetson is going to be on a competition team. If I'm not on a competition team, how am I going to get the same advocacy skills that all of the competitors are getting? How do we teach advocacy outside of the team avenue? We'll come back to the teams later, but Haley, how can I get those advocacy skills?
Well, actually, in your first year, in your Research and Writing 2 class, you actually get to conduct an oral argument. So that was the first time I got to get in front of a judge and they asked me questions on my case, and that was the first time I got to advocate. But as far as your second year, you actually get to choose what classes you you want to take. And you can take advocacy classes, including trial ad, negotiation, advanced legal skills, pre-trial practice. There's a number of different classes that you can take to get involved in advocacy if you don't choose to be on a team.
Right. And as we've said, that advocacy area is really the area where you're actually doing what lawyers do, right?
Yes.
As opposed to thinking what lawyers think, you're actually doing it. You mentioned pre-trial practice. What is that? That sounds different.
Well, pre-trial practice is exactly what it says. It's all of the practice you get before trial. So drafting memos, drafting briefs, taking depositions, all the things, all gathering evidence, discovery, all the things you would be doing before trial, and getting those skills, because it's important, because you have to gather all of your evidence and get all of your depositions before you go to trial.
Right. Now, if I am a student and I don't want to do a competition, can I concentrate on advocacy in some other way, Jeremy?
Yeah, that's what I did. I'm in the concentration program, the advocacy concentration, and you take all of those classes. You take pretrial practice, and you can take appellate advocacy, or you take negotiation, mediation, a lot of these skills classes, and that's an aspect of it. And then the other aspect is working in the advocacy center, working with the competition teams, volunteering at different advocacy events. There's the national tax competition going on right now, where you get to sit there in the courtroom and bailiff, and you get to hear the arguments and kind of understand what's going on. And then there's a writing requirement that you write a paper about an advocacy type issue, and that I wrote on a standard of review issue in the appellate law. And so there's a lot of opportunities to become involved and to get that extra learning in that area of advocacy, even if I didn't do any of the competition teams.
All right. And Felicia, you've actually done a clinic or an internship. Talk to us a little bit about that, because that'd be an also opportunity to do that hands-on stuff.
Well, I've done actually a couple of internships, and we have over 400 opportunities in that area, so it's amazing. The first internship I did was sort of a appellate panel internship with one of the panels here in St. Pete, and that was interesting because I got to work with a panel of judges reviewing DUI cases. So, you know, deciding if someone's rights were taken away and if they deserve to have their license back, and seeing how that works. Then the second internship was even more interesting because it was with Gulf Coast Legal Services and family law. And I actually was entrusted with interviewing clients, and, you know, I really got that experience of dealing with a client that's going through a very sensitive issue and learning how to talk about things like that. So you get that hands-on experience, because now when you get out into the real world, you're already accustomed to dealing with delicate topics, and it's not as uncomfortable for you, and therefore not as uncomfortable for the person that you're talking to.
Yeah. I think it's clear that here at Stetson, we want every student, regardless of whether they're on a competition team or whether they're not on a competition team, to get the opportunity to learn that hands-on experience, whether it be in what we call simulation classes, where basically you're trying a case or you're making an argument to a panel of judges, or whether it's through the concentration program, or whether it's through our clinics and internships. Everybody here at Stetson has the opportunity to get that kind of hands-on training before they go. We want you to not only think like a lawyer, we want you to know how to act like a lawyer. And so that's kind of our mantra here at Stetson, is that we want our lawyers to go out ready to practice law. Let's step back for just a second and talk a little bit about the actual competition teams, right? We got lots to talk about with regard to competition teams, and all three of you have been involved in that. Haley, let's start with ADR, or Alternative Dispute Resolution. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and how you go about becoming a part of that team, and then what you do as far as competitions are concerned?
Sure. Well, you can try out your second year. And it is the week before classes start, so you get to go through your first year learning, like Jeremy said, the black letter law, and then you get to try out your second year. And during tryouts, you perform a client counseling interview, as well as a negotiation. And then you try out, and if you get picked for the team, you're on the Alternative Dispute Resolution Board, which no one really knows what that is, because unless you're on the team or you ask somebody, which is what I did. But Alternative Dispute Resolution Board actually consists of multiple teams. It consists of mediation, arbitration, negotiation, and client counseling. So when you get on the team, you're a potential member of all of those teams, which is really awesome, because you can compete on potentially all of those teams through your 2 years if you decide to be on the team for both years. I've personally been on the negotiation team my first semester, and now I'm on the client counseling team.
Let me just ask you a couple questions, because maybe we all kind of get what that means, but you said to try out, I have to interview a client.
Yes.
What do I know before I start interviewing the client? Do I know anything about the client?
That's what's really interesting, is that when the client comes in, you don't know anything about them other than their name, and they're coming to you for a particular issue. So it's, Mrs. Smith is coming to you about a child custody issue, and that's all you know. And so when the client comes in, you really have to have those people skills to get to know your client before you counsel them. It's not, the law is important, but it's more important that that client feels comfortable with you, because they have the power to hire you or not. If you go in and they don't feel comfortable with you, you might be the best lawyer in the world, but if they don't hire you, then you don't have the case. So those people skills are really what's important first, and then the law comes later.
And then I guess being able to ask questions to actually come up with what are the facts of the case, right?
Yes, it's not just about who you are, but you have to know the proper legal questions to ask that client. So if it was a child custody issue, you would have to know a lot about family law. And it's not just so much about who they are, but it's about what their issue is, because if you don't know all of the facts, and they are not necessarily just going to come out and tell you everything, you have to know the questions that probe them to answer those certain questions, so that you have all of the facts that you need to assess whether you can really help them as a lawyer or not.
And I think one of the fun things is that we have also an interviewing and counseling class. So students
Yes.
that aren't in that get that opportunity also. Occasionally they get to interview me, and I get to cry and make it really crazy for them. So that's a really interesting skill that's so necessary no matter what area of law you go into. I thought it was interesting, Haley, you actually are not in the advocacy concentration, you're in another of our concentrations.
Yes, ma'am. I'm in the environmental law concentration.
So being in the environmental law concentration, why did you choose to also do an advocacy competition team? What was your thinking?
Well, in environmental law, a lot of the law is conducted in negotiation and mediation. That's where a lot of environmental law happens. You go to trial, but not as often in that area. So I chose the team that I thought would help me most in terms of gaining the practical skills that I needed to go into environmental law.
Interesting. Now, somebody has asked a question, when is the soonest that I can try out for a competition team?
Your second year, you can try out for a competition team. It depends. For ADR, the week before classes start, you try out. So by the time classes start, you know if you're on the team or not.
Okay. And I think trial team is the same way, correct?
Yes, as far as the actual tryouts are, usually around the same time, as Haley was saying, a week or two before class, and by the time classes start, you'd know. So the soonest you could try out would be after your first year, that summer right after. That would be the soonest you could.
Now, I think Moot Court has a couple of different opportunities to become part of the Moot Court team. Jeremy, can you tell us just a little bit about not the tryouts, but just when can you try out for the Moot Court team?
Yeah, there's one opportunity that comes at the end of the second semester. I think you were mentioning this with the RNW2 class, that there's an opportunity to do an oral argument as a part of your grade. That also counts towards getting on the board, and those selected from that process are also given an opportunity to come onto Moot Court. Then, like trial team, there's a process during the summer between the first and second year that allows students to try out who didn't make it through that first process.
If I decide I don't want to do it for my second year, can I do it for my third year?
Yes, you can. That is actually what I did. So, you have 2 years to sort of feel it out and speak to team members, which is something that I did, research it and sort of see and decide. So let's say your first year, that summer comes and you're not sure yet. You can go ahead and wait until the summer after your second year and then try out.
All right.
It, of course, means you only have 1 year on the team, but it's what I did and I like it.
Yeah. Now, I want to ask you one more question, and then we'll talk to the trial team folks over there. But tell me about the negotiation team, because you said you were on the negotiation team. So
Yes.
how would that competition work, and what skills would you learn in negotiation?
Well, negotiation team, you actually compete with a partner. So you have, it's you and that partner, and for the competition, you get a set of facts that both teams know. So it's a general set of facts that both sides will be aware of and know, but then each side gets a set of secret facts. And those facts are your goals for the negotiation, what you're trying to accomplish, some facts that you don't want the other side to necessarily know. And so what's interesting about negotiation is that it can only be rehearsed to a certain point. You can get your openings and your closings down, but the middle is kind of up for grabs, because when you go into the competition, you don't know what the other side wants. And so the part of negotiation is a lot of thinking on your feet. Once you know what the other side wants, you have to be willing to compromise, and you have to know what your resistance points are so that you can get what you want for your client. And most importantly, you may be the lawyer, but your client has full authority. You can't agree to anything that your client is not willing to agree to. So it's really about advocating for your client and getting what your client wants, and knowing that you don't have authority outside of what your client wants.
Interesting. And again, if I don't want to be on the negotiation team, because that would scare me to death, there's a negotiation class that will actually teach you, how do I go about getting to yes, right? Getting to the answer that I want to get. And that's a skill. That's an advocacy skill, and it's one that we're really proud of here at Stetson. Well, let's move from ADR, alternative dispute resolution, to very much dispute resolution, which is trial team. Felicia, tell us a little bit about the trial team and how that works.
So Haley pretty much talked about the application process. As I was saying, that's pretty much within the same time frame. For trial team, you receive, a short fact pattern, pretty much telling you, what the details of the case are, and from there, you have to give a closing argument usually. And the way it works is that in the preliminary round, you'll be on one side, and in the more final round, you'll be on the next side. So it sort of tests whether or not you have the ability to see both sides of an argument, And because you have those 2 years to feel it out, if you're sure early that you want to be on trial team, you have 2 tries to make it, You can try after that first year, and then you can try after the second year. And trial team really focuses on mock trials. So what happens when you actually, get into the courtroom and you are now in a trial. So if you were to look at it on a sort of timeline, you would have, the alternative dispute resolution as your sort of prior portion. And then if that doesn't work, then you would get to the trial. And after the trial, you would have the appellate process, in which you would get into what Jeremy does with Moot Court.
Well, I guess my question would be who decides whether you're on the team or not? Who are the judges?
For a trial team, the community is the judges at first. So your preliminary rounds, you have some lawyers, some regular people, just anyone from the community that is in touch with Stetson. And they'd be sitting in the jury box, and they'd have a score sheet, and that would be the preliminary round. If you make it out of the preliminary round and get into the final rounds, you're now going to be seeing professors, deans from Stetson, coaches of the trial team, things like that. So that is the heat round.
Tell me, how many hours do you think in the 4 weeks before you go to a competition that you're actually practicing?
Wow. So I would have to tell you, you're looking at double what you could imagine doing at a regular job. You know what I mean? So imagine being at a job, clerking at a law firm, and double that. And you have the amount of preparation you're doing in the weeks leading up to the trial, up to the competition. Because outside of practice, you're not just relaxing. It's not practice and then downtime. It's practice and then fix what you got critiqued on. It's practice and then continue to read the fact pattern. So you're looking about probably more than 40 hours a week of commitment.
Did you flunk out of school doing that?
No. The best thing about it is that you learn, the skills that you're going to need as an actual lawyer, because we think of lawyers and we think of this 9 to 5 thing, and it's really not true. Most of the lawyers that I've spoken to, our jobs are not, a lawyer is not a 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. thing. So you learn to really sort of live with your work and maintain the balance and still get your work done. It's not easy, but it's a skill you're going to need when you get out of Stetson. So.
Okay. Well, so Felicia told us that we start with the ADR, try to negotiate and settle that case. We then go to trial because we couldn't negotiate and settle that case. We then finish trial, and then we have Moot Court. So what's Moot Court, and how does that relate to this whole process?
So Moot Court's the appellate process that starts after the trial ends. Obviously, usually whoever loses that trial wants to appeal. There's always a winner and a loser. And the loser goes on to the courts of appeal, and sometimes the Supreme Court. So the moot court process is mimicking exactly what happens in real life, where the parties write a brief, and then they go on to argue it in front of a panel of judges, anywhere from 3 to 9 judges. So we go to different competitions in all different aspects of the law. We can tax competitions or bankruptcy or veterans law. But it's mimicking that process, kind of like trial team. You're going through exactly the same steps that you do in a regular trial, with introducing evidence and crossing witnesses and doing those things. It's the exact same way in appellate law, where you file the brief, you prepare that 15-minute oral argument to persuade the judges why your side was wrongly or wronged in the trial court.
And do you just, is it kind of like just a debate, so you just kind of stand up and talk, or is it something different than just you doing kind of a speech?
Yeah, it's much different than a speech. You get a lot of questions.
Okay.
The judges, they don't sit there quietly and just listen to your prepared speech. They very much like to interact and interrupt you, often within the first few seconds of your introduction, even starting. They like to get in there and ask their questions on the areas of the law that they may disagree with your side with, or they may find that the public policy may be not on your side, and so they kind of push you around a little bit and see how well you know the law, how well you know the facts, and how you can apply different courts' precedent to the current law.
Okay. Now, you used the word brief. Now, I'm thinking what a brief is, and it doesn't make sense to me. Tell me, what is a brief, and what does that mean when you tell me that you have to write a brief?
So I think just like ADR and trial team, we get a record, and we get some facts of what happened in the trial court, maybe what happened in pre-trial, and we have usually 1 or 2, maybe even 3 or 4 legal issues. And so we write a persuasive brief. It's not really brief, but we write.
It's 50 pages. I don't know if that's brief, but okay.
You do legal research. You structure an argument and write this. It's kind of like a memo to the court on why what the trial court did was wrong and why the appellate court should fix that error. Mm-hmm. So it's usually like 40, 50 pages, and has a fact section, has the legal section that has a conclusion on what you want the court to do.
Well, how do you learn how to write that brief? I mean, if I've never written a brief, how am I going to know how to do that if I'm on the moot court team?
Well, in RNW2, the second semester of your first year, you have that opportunity to write an appellate brief for a grade. So it's more than an opportunity. You
get an invitation to write a brief in your class.
You get the same type of thing with moot court. You get that record, you get the facts, and then you go research and find the law to support your argument. And then you're in class and you're working with professors. They teach you the ropes on how to do it, and then you can turn around and get to do it on a competition team. And I think, like everybody else would say, practice really is the key, and that the more you do it, the better you get.
Right. Well, you guys have talked about these teams. Where do you go to do these competitions? What kind of travel is involved in the competition teams?
You go a lot of places. So far, I've been to Macon, Georgia. We're going to Boston next week. We've gone to Chicago, Virginia. Anywhere that the ABA decides that the competition is going to be held that year, that's where we go.
That's where you go. Jeremy, where are some places you guys have gone with Moot Court?
I got to go to Orlando here in Florida.
Oh, goody! You just won the Super Bowl. Where are you going? Disney.
Washington, D.C. a couple times, Miami, and then Stetson goes to an international competition that's held either in Hong Kong, where I went, and then it's held in Vienna this year in Austria.
Wow. Now, do you have to pay to go to all of these competitions?
No, Stetson covers all the expenses.
All right. Felicia, trial team, where are some places they've gone, you've gone?
Well, being that it's my first year on the team, I've really only been to Texas and South Florida, and I'll have the possible opportunity to go up north later on in the spring.
All right, very exciting. Tell me if you had to come up with one kind of, this is the epitome of my competition team experience. What would you think about? What would that be? An experience you've had with your competition?
I would say it's kind of like a family, in that you get that record, and the international team that I was on, we worked together for 9 months before we went to the competition. So we met 4 or 5 times a week, and we worked on this brief together, and then we practiced together. So you really became a family. You knew everything about each other. You spent so much time together, and then we flew together to Hong Kong on a 17-hour flight. And so you really got real comfortable with everybody in your group. I think the funniest experience we had was our first restaurant off the plane. We were in Hong Kong. None of us had ever been there before. And so we go into the non-touristy part. We really wanted to experience the culture. And we walk into a restaurant as 9 Americans who didn't realize that you're not supposed to talk when you're eating your meal. So we had a bit of an interesting experience because we're all talking loud and we're excited to be in Hong Kong, and they ushered us out pretty quickly.
I bet they did.
After they were done hearing us talk.
I bet they did.
Growing up, I was always told, you're too loud, Felicia, you're too loud. And it was always something that I got in trouble for. And so our last competition, Chester Bedell in West Palm Beach, we were in for the final round, this huge historic courtroom. And it was full of teachers that teach government and civics class. So the entire gallery was full. And the judge pretty much said, all throughout the trial, if you're not speaking loud enough, I'm going to stop you. And so, lo and behold, everyone else was pretty much stopped but me, I think only once, because I knew how to get loud enough for everybody to hear me. So the minute the competition was over, I called my mom and I said, see, me getting loud is good for something, So for once in my life, me being loud actually paid off.
That's funny. Now, somebody has asked if these competition team cases are real cases or what? Are they real cases?
Some of them are. They're not necessarily the actual names and details of the real case, but a lot of times it's based off of something real. Professor Flowers had this experience with me in the fall where the Tournament of Champions was based on a college football setup that was a lot like the SEC and Texas.
Right.
So sometimes it's based off of something real.
Right. And what was interesting about that was that we were trying the competition at Baylor, and Baylor was the one that had not gotten invited to the SEC,
Yes.
and so they were still a little. So you had to think about, well, we don't want to insult Baylor by saying tough, you didn't get invited, right? So it was kind of fun to try to figure out how to do that in a politically correct way. Real cases.
Some of them are.
Yeah.
We had a similar experience with the veterans law competition in that we were arguing in front of the U.S. Court of Appeals in D.C. and they had just decided the case that we had in our problem, and the court had split 2-1, and we got to go re-argue it in front of them, just like the lawyers did 2 months ago, and they unfortunately they reversed it for us, and they found in our favor. But it was interesting. They had the exact same arguments, nearly the same facts, but we got to redo it for them.
A redo. What do you think? Are they real? Are they realistic, the cases that you're doing?
They're definitely realistic. So far in my experience, we haven't had any cases that are based on real cases, but they're based on very common legal issues that you run into in the certain areas of the law. So property law, environmental law, media law, sports law. You are running into negotiations that would happen very often. So you're getting those skills that say, well, this isn't based on a real case, but at least when I run into this, which I'm most likely to run into this in my practice, I have those skills necessary.
Excellent. Now, somebody has asked the question, is it expensive to be on the trial team? And you already are on the teams, and you already told us Stetson pays for all of your travel. Do you have to pay anything to be on a team?
No, no expenses at all.
Not necessarily, but there are, some things that you all, the students might want to consider. You don't have to pay to be on the team, but you do have to buy your suit, and for women, get a nice set of pearls, and I'm used to my pearls today. Little things that you're going to need, but no major cost. You can find a good affordable suit.
Yeah. All right. And of course, most of the time, I think all of the competition teams are also considered to be classes, so you get some credit for those being in the competition team. So, when you're on the competition team, that's also additional credit so that you can count that towards your graduation. One of the questions that I thought was interesting was the question about, are these advocacy skills the kind of advocacy skills that would help me to be involved in lobbying or involved on a national or state level? And I wanted to just mention that under our advocacy center, we have a very special concentration called our social justice concentration. And our social justice concentration is really for those folks that are interested in advocating for causes. And so you can get a concentration. You can work with our two professors, one that kind of zeroes in on criminal issues and one that kind of zeroes in on civil issues, to learn how to advocate on a more broad-based level, not just advocating for a single client, but advocating for a cause. So if you're interested in that public interest area, yes, we do have a place for you here at Stetson. I would also say to you that many of the advocacy skills that you've heard about already, negotiations, counseling, how to present yourself persuasively in a trial situation, how to argue in front of judges, are going to be very important skills for a lobbyist. Jeremy has to know how to answer questions that he hasn't expected to be asked. And so that's always a skill, to be able to think quickly on your feet. So I think that's a place where we've seen. We're also very proud that we have several current politicians that have gone straight from Stetson and have been elected. So that's kind of exciting for us in that area also. Somebody asked me to kind of do a distinction between clinics and internships. Great question. A clinic is an opportunity to actually be under the practice rule of the Florida Bar, which actually allows you to practice. So you can interview clients. If you're in the public defender or the prosecution clinic, you can actually appear in court and do exactly what a prosecutor or a public defender would do in the course of representing a client. An internship, you aren't under that practice rule. So you're really working more with an attorney, and you aren't allowed to actually practice law, where a clinic you're allowed to practice law. So some of our internships, like Felicia mentioned, is to work directly with judges. So we have a lot of internships involving judges. So that is an opportunity, but that's kind of the difference between clinics and internships. Both have amazing opportunities. Many of our internships, for example, in our environmental law area, we have several internships. In the elder law area, we have several internships that allow you to go alongside an attorney and really learn what it means to practice those areas of law. One of the things we don't want you to leave Stetson without is the opportunity to really know what it means to be a lawyer. And that's why we have so many internships, so many clinics, to give you that opportunity. We're going to take a little break now, and we'll be back in about, I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? No, not that long. 5 minutes, just to give you a little time to take a break. See you soon.
I'm Chris Petroskevich, Dean and Professor of Law at the Stetson University College of Law. Many of our faculty and staff are going to answer the question of what it is to be an advocate. As we talk to lawyers in our community, there are two major skills that lawyers have when they graduate. One is to be able to advocate orally, the other is to advocate in writing. We very much look forward to you joining us here on campus, and we look forward to seeing you here soon.
I strive to be the kind of advocate who sees beauty and value in every person. I want to fight for those who are forgotten in our legal system, and I hope to be a role model for younger women of all walks of life. I want them to know that they're worthy of respect.
I was inspired by a story that my mentor told me of him helping his elderly father's friend in a situation where the gentleman was powerless to help himself. So I saw law as the medium through which I could help a large amount of people and make a positive difference in their lives.
I think what it all boils down to is that as long as you're working towards what is in the best interest of your client, you are being the best advocate that you can be.
I'm an advocate that aims to internationalize the student experience and our campus.
I came to Stetson with the hope of using my advocacy skills to defend the environment, because the environment is very important to me and it's something that I'm passionate about.
Right now I'm working with middle school and high school students in teaching them about the criminal justice system and the juvenile justice system, and it's called the Street Law Program.
Really what an advocate does is really get behind a cause, whether it's supporting their client's position or it's getting behind a cause and compelling others to action. It's really about empowering people to me.
Students always ask me, what is the single greatest characteristics that a truly great advocate has? And the answer that I give them is one that they never expect: compassion. It's all about being able to sense the case through the other person's eyes.
Advocacy is about being a voice for your clients. The law can be very complicated, and sometimes it's difficult to understand. And as a lawyer, you educate, you advise, and you advocate on behalf of your clients. And as an advocate, you can make a difference not only in the lives of your client, but also in the lives of those in society.
Right now I'm interning with a judge in St. Petersburg, and I get to see the state attorneys come in every day and get to watch what they do and see it from the judicial perspective. But I know more than anything I want to be on the other side of the bench. I want to be a prosecutor and be able to be a litigator and be an advocate in the court day in and day out.
I like to be an advocate who uses the law to make people's lives better. In elder law, it's important to recognize that people are in significant situations where a lawyer can provide them with great legal options and give them a better quality of life.
Being an advocate means representing the interest of those who can't speak for themselves, like these animals.
I'm a civil and human rights advocate, and to me that means that I am dedicated to using my skills, my persuasive, analytical, and organizational skills, to make sure that human needs are prioritized above financial profit.
I hope you've enjoyed hearing from our students and faculty, and very much look forward to seeing you here on our campus.
Well, that was kind of fun, that video. I think it was an interesting last question. The question was, what kind of an advocate are you? And we actually have a question that kind of goes hand in hand with that, which is, how do I know which one of these teams would be right for me? You know, whether I'd be a good trial team member, I'd be a good ADR member, a good moot court member. What are some things that you would suggest that people consider when they are thinking about what kind of team they should be on?
Well, when I considered what team I should be on, I kind of focused on what my strengths and weaknesses were. I knew that I was good at talking with people, but I wasn't necessarily good at talking in front of people. So I knew that trial team and moot court probably weren't the best places for me. But I knew that I could talk with people, I was really good at compromise, and I could always see both sides of the situation. So I knew that ADR board would probably be a good place for me because it would give me an opportunity to hone in on my speaking skills and speaking with people, but I still didn't have to talk in front of people. So.
Okay, all right. What were some things you considered? Being loud. And we don't have a cheerleading squad, so that was
I know,
the best
right?
bet.
So besides my volume, I considered what I wanted to do, you know, and so I've always known that I wanted to be a trial lawyer. So trial team was just the natural fit because it meant getting trial experience without actually having to do this experimental thing at a real job where you might get in some serious trouble, you know. So that's the reason that I chose trial team. So I think you should mainly consider, what do you want to do? You know, why are you in law school? And use that as your guide to what team you want to be on.
What do you want to do? What is it that you see yourself doing after this law school experience?
Well, as I was saying, I always saw myself in trial, and actually at 5 years old, I told my family that I was going to be a prosecutor. I don't even know if I knew what that was. Ironically enough, I, you know, am blessed that I got hired to be a prosecutor in Bronx County in New York. So that's what I'll be doing after I graduate in May.
Cool, I didn't know that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's very
Thank
cool.
you.
How did you decide on moot court?
Well, actually, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I came to law school, so I tried everything. I did the statement, or the opening statement and closing statement competitions my first year that trial team does, and I kind of got to experience what trial team was like. I was a witness and a client for interview and counseling, so I got to kind of experience what the ADR board was like, and then I did the moot court kind of aspect of it during the RW2 class. And so I kind of got to try a little bit of everything, kind of see what I liked, see what fit, and then at moot court was really where I felt most comfortable, that I enjoyed having that interaction with the judges, having them talk back, having that opportunity to be questioned and try to think on my feet, and have that opportunity to also write and work on my writing skills.
Okay. Well, now each one of you is on one team, but if I wanted to be on two teams, could I be on more than one team?
I would say yes. I mean, there's a lot of members of moot court that are on moot court and trial team, or moot court and ADR, or moot court and law review, or different opportunities. They do cross over quite a bit.
Okay. What's law review? What exactly is that?
Go ahead.
Law review is a journal that you can be on starting your second year. You can either grade on to law review. So if you're in the top, is it 1%? 2% of your first year class, then you grade onto law review. You can also write onto law review. You have an opportunity in the summer or the winter to write on, and you do a cite and source where they give you citations and you have to correct them and you also have a writing portion, and the law review team actually decides who's going to be on law review.
And law review is just basically I always think of it kind of as a academic magazine, right? Or
Yes.
it's where you have different articles. Now, I'm just going to suggest to you the articles go on forever and ever and ever, like 45, 50 pages, but it's like that. Now, are there other writing opportunities here at Stetson besides the law review?
There are. I can speak personally for Julep, which is the Journal of International Wildlife Law and Policy. It's a super long title, so we just call it Julep. If you want to be on a journal and get that experience of getting better at citation and getting better at editing skills, because in a lot of coming out of law school, you're most likely going to be writing a lot and editing and doing briefs and memos, and you want those skills that make you marketable. So I'm on Julep, and we get articles and we have to edit them and we have to check the citations and make sure that they're still accurate and you can find the citations and they're correctly formatted. So you get that experience, but it's not necessarily as time consuming as law review.
Okay. And we do have several. We have the environmental law or the wildlife.
Yes.
We have an elder law journal that's an international journal. We also have an advocacy journal. So there are lots of opportunities for students to get experience writing in addition to their classes. And we have students that do both competition teams and law review. We have students that do one or two different competition teams. You're not allowed to do all three, but you can do at least two. And the faculty advisors for each one of those try to work together to try to make sure that they're not pushing and pulling you between two teams. So if you are interested in two teams, you certainly can do that. And we've had lots of very successful advocates who were able to do more than one team. So that certainly is an opportunity. So let me ask a little bit about mediation. Now, you mentioned that there's a mediation team. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, there is a mediation team. I haven't been on the mediation team yet, but it just depends on, from year to year, there are different competitions that Stetson chooses to be in. And so far, we have not done a mediation competition this year, but maybe next year. And mediation is a lot like negotiation, where in negotiation, you have just the lawyers in the room. And it could be 1 to 2 lawyers, so we have 2 lawyers in the room for competition. But for mediation, you actually have the client in the room, and there's a mediator, a third party, who is going back and forth between each side, asking them what they want, and kind of basically like the referee. And in negotiation, you don't have that mediator.
And one of the exciting things here at Stetson is that we actually have an internship where you can become certified as a mediator before you even graduate from law school. So some people who have that interest in being kind of the problem solver, because remember, if you're a mediator, you don't actually represent either of the sides. You're the neutral person that's trying to help them resolve their dispute. You can actually become certified as a county court mediator here at Stetson before you graduate. So we're very excited about that opportunity for those students that have that interest. Some people go through that internship, learn to be mediators, even though they don't ever plan to be a mediator, just so they learn kind of the tricks of the trade so that when they're a lawyer working with a mediator, they know that information. So that's a great opportunity to do that. Somebody has asked the question, will my grades suffer if I do one of these competition teams? And you talked a little bit about balance, but Jeremy, Haley, how do you do that? How do you balance all that goes on? I know Jeremy's in the middle of writing a brief, we use that term loosely, right now, so he can maybe talk about how do you balance all those things and still maintain your grade point average?
I think 2 things. First, it comes down to your teammates, and that there is a lot of reliance you have on your teammates to set schedules that are good for everybody, that everyone still has time to do their classes, to do their homework, to have opportunities even to go outside the library maybe a little bit, have a little bit of a social life. But I've personally experienced that the more I've worked on Moot Court and the more I've practiced my writing and done my oral arguments, that it's actually helped me be a better writer for law school. And that when it comes to writing law school exams and comes down to putting on paper what you've learned throughout an entire semester, that the experience I've had with Moot Court and being concise and being persuasive and using the law and the facts in a concise, persuasive manner, all on a time crunch, all of my Moot Court experiences actually helped me do better in my classes. So I really haven't had any negative consequences. It's been a positive experience.
Very cool. Haley?
It's definitely about time management. I know you're going to hear that a lot in law school when you come and you go to orientation. You say, how am I going to juggle everything? It's just about time management. But it really is. It's about it's about planning ahead of time, not procrastinating. You can get everything done in one day if you just plan accordingly and not necessarily always have your weekends. You're going to have to do some work on the weekends. You're going to have practice on the weekends. But as far as these teams, it's not work when you get on these teams and you get invested in these facts and these fact packets. It's not work anymore. It's enjoyable, and you're learning so much about yourself and other people, and you're becoming a better advocate that you want to go to practice, and work comes second.
Wow. Well, now somebody's asked the question, are these civil cases or criminal cases, or how is it decided what kind of case? The viewer noted that in mock trial in undergraduate, they would alternate. 1 year would be civil and 1 year would be criminal. How does it work with regard to the subject matter of the different kinds of cases? Felicia?
Well, I can say for a trial team, it often depends on the competition. Different competitions actually in their name will say, you know, national criminal such and such competition or national civil such and such competition. Or some competition organizers do rotate. 1 year they're civil, 1 year they're criminal. So it will depend on what competitions you go to as to whether or not you'll be doing criminal or civil. And it's a great opportunity because, you know, as someone who's going to be practicing criminal law, I'm doing competitions where I'm practicing civil. So I'm getting, you know, a taste of both.
All right. How about Moot Court?
Yeah, Moot Court's kind of the same, that you have the competitions like the bankruptcy competition. You know that the problem's going to be about bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have competitions that, like the ABA national competition, that every year is different. You have no idea what's going to come down. It's just, I think last year it was on an evidentiary issue. And we had the New York City Bar competition, which was an antitrust issue. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so it kind of just depends on year to year what the competition coordinators feel like throwing at the students, and maybe what's a hot topic in the law. But
Right.
it
Yeah.
usually changes.
Yeah. And ADR?
Mainly civil.
Okay.
You're dealing a lot with money, but also just your client goals and wants and needs, and so you're dealing a lot with damages and civil damages and things like that.
All right. And again, Stetson isn't making those choices. Those are actually made by the competitions that we go to. They decide whether it'll be civil or criminal, and some are always civil and some are always criminal. Anybody involved with the Veterans Law Institute at all here at Stetson? No?
I did a little pro bono work with my 2L year, my last year, and I ended up working on my independent research project with the Veterans Law Institute, and working with veterans as they go from through the process and appealing from. There's a board of Veterans Affairs that deals with issues, and then they can appeal it to the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. So I got to kind of see how that process works, and got to see how Stetson really reaches out in the community and offers free legal services to any of the veterans, and even does will drafting and does these types of things for those veterans who need that service.
Yeah, I think we have some very exciting things going on here with regard to our Veterans Law Institute and various services that we provide veterans, and also a clinic that allows you to actually interview and assist veterans in getting benefits. So it's kind of it's a clinic opportunity. It's also a pro bono opportunity. I know that in the Elder Law Center, we are right now involved in what we call the Wills for the Greatest Generation, which basically allows us to give free wills to World War II veterans and veterans of Korea and Vietnam. And so we have them coming in. They're interviewed by the students all by themselves. The students interview them to get all the information. The students then create the will for them, and then the student is allowed to sit in when they meet with the attorney to learn how an attorney deals with a client when they are going through the will process. So I know that's an opportunity we have to serve veterans. You mentioned this word pro bono. Talk to me a little bit about the pro bono requirement and opportunities here at Stetson.
So in order to graduate, you have to do 120 hours of pro bono, basically free legal services or some type of volunteering. You have to do 60 hours of legal pro bono, meaning something that you're actually doing that has a legal impact. And then there's 60 hours of, it can be anything, non-legal or legal. often I think students do much more than 120, and most of my friends have 200 or 300 hours that they have when that as they're going towards graduation.
Right.
That a lot. I know I did this when I had my internship. That I loved being there so much and working there so much. I just continued on there with the pro bono and continued working there and assisting the people there who needed, couldn't afford legal representation, and we were able to provide that for them.
Mm-hmm. All right. Pro bono is, Jeremy over-egged it a little bit because we only have 60 total hours that are required of you.
Oh,
you can divide it, yeah. I didn't want to scare you off with 120 hours. We have 60 hours that are required. At least half of them have to be legal related, and the other 30 can be non-legal, which are basically community service opportunities. And so we have all kinds of community service opportunities for students to get out in the community and really get to know people, and to think about what kind of people are going to be my clients when I graduate, and I need to get out in the community and learn how to deal with those kinds of people. And if I'm going to be representing elderly, I need to be comfortable with dealing with the elderly, and so this gives you the opportunity to do that. The pro bono, the legal opportunity, gives you the chance to try out again. One of the things we want to encourage students to do here at Stetson is try out stuff. Figure out, do I like this? Maybe I don't like this. I thought I wanted to do guardianship work, but when I sit and listen to these guardianship hearings, they make me so sad I can't stand it. Well, that's not a good way to spend the rest of your life. But the only way you can do that is if you try it out. And so we have lots of opportunities to try out things here at Stetson. Now, one of you mentioned a competition, the 1L competitions. Do we have internal, like intramural competitions here at Stetson?
We do. Moot Court has one that they just started this year where you don't have to do a writing requirement. There's no brief. You just do the fun part, the oral argument. So you're given a fact pattern. You get one little baby legal issue that you argue for 5 minutes in front of a panel of judges. And this year we had some alums from the area that came back and were guest judges, and then our final panel was some of the deans of the law school. So you got an opportunity to try to do the Moot Court experience and kind of get to feel what it's like.
And Jeremy actually wrote the problem for that. What was the problem? It was a very cute problem.
So it was based off the movie Frozen, and that whether or not Elsa committed a tort against the city when she froze the lake and froze all the ships and stopped everybody from being able to bring their goods into port and all the goods that were destroyed, and whether or not the town had any legal remedies against her.
Right. It was very fun. Any trial team competitions, intramural competitions?
Yes, Trial Team hosts what's called an AAJ competition. It's an intramural here at Stetson, and it's usually a team of 4 people. You can either find your own team, or you can talk to the trial team members and tell them that you don't have any team members, and they'll help you coordinate that. And it's usually done in the spring. I actually did AAJ. It's a great way to sort of get a warm up and feel of what it's like to try out for trial team. It was actually one of the things that helped me decide, yes, I'm going to try out.
Somebody's asked a little bit about child advocacy and what kind of programs do we have for representing children. And we actually have a juvenile advocacy initiative here at Stetson that is run by Judy Scully, Professor Scully, who's also in charge of our social justice concentration. And a lot of our child advocacy issues come in under our social justice concentration that allows you to concentrate on how do I represent juveniles. We have several juvenile law classes. We have a clinic, and we have a very active guardian ad litem program here at Stetson that allows you the opportunity to act as a guardian ad litem, which again is such a great opportunity to see what it is like to deal with what your clients are going to look like. And so there are lots of opportunities for those people that are interested in child advocacy. I love all the questions that talk about the different kinds of advocacy, because that's exactly what we want you to understand. Advocacy is not just being in trial. It's learning the skills to help people accomplish what they need to accomplish. And whether those people are the elderly, whether there are people with issues of environmental law, whether there are issues with children, all of those clients need us to help them accomplish what they need to accomplish. And that's what we want to do here at Stetson. We want to teach you the skills you need to help those clients. We really see ourselves as very much a client-based kind of school. We're here to learn how to serve. We're here to learn how to make good things happen for our clients and to help them accomplish what they need to accomplish. And so child advocacy is just one more area where Professor Scully has really, in the last 5 or 6 years, really advanced that area. And I encourage you, if you have questions about our child advocacy, to email Professor Scully. She would love to talk to you about her juvenile advocacy initiative that's going on. She also has an Innocence Project initiative that we started several years ago, where we look at cases where people claim not that they were misrepresented, but that they literally were innocent of the crime that they've been charged with. And we've done some very interesting work in that area, including working with the Florida Commission on innocence, in helping them to devise and to research some of the issues that cause wrongful convictions. So that's a very interesting area, and if you have an interest in that, again, I would encourage you to email myself, and I will get you in touch with Professor Scully, or to email any of the other people that are involved in that area to help you understand that area. I guess I have a question because I want to make sure that everybody understands. Tell me what the support system is like here at Stetson to be able to be involved in all of these variety of different things. What kinds of supports are here at Stetson to help you do that?
Well, you know, of course you have your classmates and your teammates. You know, that's pretty much your first basis of support, you know, because they're going through the exact same thing with, as Jeremy was saying, trying to balance their schoolwork and the work on the team. Then you have faculty, you know, all the faculty are aware of the teams and how they work for the most part. So you have the ability to tell a professor, you know, Professor Flowers, I'm going to such and such competition and I can't be in class, you know, because we'll be gone. And that professor, usually they're very understanding and they understand and get it and will give you, you know, a break on that. And you also have, you know, the student life office, which has all these, you know, really good opportunities for you to relieve your stress with counseling, and even with just going in there and talking to someone that works there. So there's sort of a multi-layered system of support here.
Now, you mentioned a little bit about the alumni. How involved are the alumni at Stetson, especially in the competition team area?
Oh, I'd say, I mean, very. They come back to coach. They come back to participate in our practices. With the Moot Court team, it's kind of hard sometimes to get the experience of what it's going to be like arguing in front of judges, because you're going to have, you know, 3, 5, 7, 9 random strangers all asking you questions, coming from different points of view. So the alumni are really helpful, especially in this area. They come back all the time to kind of staff our practices, and we'll have, in areas of veterans law, we'll have actual veterans practitioners. They'll come back and ask us questions that a veterans practitioner would ask. Or for the bankruptcy competition, the bankruptcy lawyers will come back and ask questions and be in part, and not just sit there and ask questions, but work with us afterwards to talk about maybe answers that we gave that were not quite so correct, or the answer that we could give that would be more correct or more persuasive, or even so far as helping us if that's a career path we want to take, how we can get into that field, or how we can take the skills that we've learned and use that in a future career. So it's very involved.
Right. How about in ADR?
Yes. The 3Ls that have graduated always come back to help with tryouts, with being judges for the tryouts, with helping being clients. Just this past week we had an alum come back and be a client who actually did the client counseling competition, and she brought some real world experience coming back and, you know, telling us how we could better relate to the client and her experience in her first year, in terms of the workings of the office, so we could make our fake office or our fake firm seem more believable. But we definitely have a great alumni support system. And also, if we need to, for example, know more about a certain area of law, there's an alumni database that you can go into and find Stetson alum that are in that area of law now, and you can call them up and ask them questions saying, I have no idea about this area of law. Can you tell me more about it? Can you just kind of get my feet wet so I know the verbiage and I know the words to use and the buzzwords and things like that?
Well, we only have a few more minutes, so I just want to make sure that you have any other questions. I'm going to put these guys on the spot for just a second. I know that they would all be willing to answer any questions you might have, so I'm going to ask them to give you their email address so that you can contact them directly if you have questions about trial team or ADR or Moot Court or about school or about Stetson or about, oh my gosh, what's the first year look like? They're going to be willing to answer all those questions for you. So I'm going to just ask you guys nicely to give out that information. Haley?
Yes, my email is hbrew, B as in boy, REW, @law.stetson.edu.
Jeremy?
Mine is J Bailey, BAILIE, @law.stetson.edu.
And mine is P Pearson. That's 2 P's, so it's PPEARSON @law.stetson.edu.
And of course, I'm Flowers, and you can get it at law.stetson.edu. We would all love to hear from you if you have questions, if there's anything we can help you with or help answer. I think Jeremy said it best. We really do kind of feel like Stetson is a family, and that the family kind of is not just the ones here on campus, but that we're a community where many of our alums come back to help and to be part of that family and community. And so we encourage you to come join us and be a part of the Stetson family.
Thank you for watching Stetson Law Live. For more information, send us an email or give us a call. For your convenience, our contact information will remain on screen for the next few minutes. Be sure to check our homepage often for news, information, and updates. Thanks again. We look forward to hearing from you soon.